Let's go ahead and get ourselves started. I'll put that away for right now. You take a look over here. There we go. Okay. Good. Let's kind of get you going with a couple different things here. Today we are going to talk about a lot of things that are really all about finishing up where we were yesterday in terms of thinking about views, and we talked about cropping and a little about filtering yesterday, but we want to go through there's a whole cycle of how you can basically get views ready for ultimately publishing them. It involves kind of getting the right range of information by either cropping it, or today we're even going to think about how we sort of do cropping in the vertical direction, controlling what we can see based on its height, using plan regions in the view range, how we filter it using visibility graphics, and then add annotations to the views to go ahead and add the information beyond just the model to go through and explain what's going on and accurately convey what our design intent is to people who are actually looking at the ultimate sheets. We're also going to be looking at the issue of schedules and how we can create door and window schedules and room schedules, tallying up the area or the finishes in the rooms to kind of give a tabular view of all the data. And finally look at how to get all that stuff on sheets and distribute that stuff around as either PDFs if you want to distribute print them, or we're going to recommend using a format called DWF, which is a little bit better because it's not just the lines, but it actually lets us encode the actual 3D model and pass that around in a very lightweight way so that people can look at and use your model data without actually needing to have Revit installed. Okay? So that's kind of the roadmap for where we're going through this session. I just wanted to comment on the videos and what's going on there. We've been producing the videos, and the first 4 are up there. I'm still producing the ones from yesterday, but here's where you basically find them for people who want to be looking for videos in the class. If you go on out to YouTube, and you go searching for BIMtopia, try that, BIMTOPIA. You get to the BIMtopia channel where I post all sorts of stuff we work on. You can find, like, it's actually all the different classes that we've done for the last couple of years are up here too. But if you go through and click on the channel, you'll actually see there's some different playlists. And the first playlist that we just added last hour is the Stanford BIM Bootcamp playlist. So you'll see that's where the different sessions are loaded in terms of, like what we've been working on for the past couple of days. So look for session number, then group A or B, something like that, and figure out the recordings from what we did in class. And again, I've got them in last few. What? Actually, are they uploaded yet? They should be there now. Well, we're continuing to upload. There's a whole production cycle where for every 2 hours of video that we create, it takes about an hour and a half to actually produce the video at the backside, because you have to re-record them back into MP4, which is kind of a strange thing, but I don't know. That's all happening in the background, hopefully, as we keep on working here. So go ahead and take a look at those. Let's go ahead, and as we get started, let's kind of pick up sort of just general questions people are having about what they're working on. Are you having sort of like general modeling questions, or things that we want to kind of share? Because I have sort of an agenda of things we'll walk through in terms of going down here, but let's sort of see how you guys are doing this relative to your own modeling experience right now. So, like, how's it going from your perspective? Are you doing okay in terms of getting the basic walls and doors and windows and things like that? Roofs tends to often be one of the tougher struggles, mostly just because if you're really trying to think about how to model a roof, there's a lot of different pieces to it, and by the time you try to master all the different slopes and the walls coming up and catching the slopes, there's often a little bit of complexity in there. But how's that part going? Okay, well enough? No worries. If you're kind of have any questions about some specific things, just kind of ask at some point. It's really, it's all about trying to get you through the whole experience. So just keep on plugging away. Okay. And what we were going to do today is actually look at, I had a volunteer in our last class to actually let me go ahead and use their building. This is kind of a very simple example of how you might approach it. A basic building. This is the type of building that can easily be built by students in the field. It's kind of a big rectangular box that sort of fits the needs. Some of your buildings may be more architecturally adventurous. Some may be very simple like this. Either way is okay. The important thing is just really how well you're using the model to convey your design. Okay, so people will be all over the board in terms of what their designs look like. But we had a volunteer actually let me go ahead and use this model. So let's go ahead and I'll sort of illustrate things relative to this model that he created. And from that, we can go ahead and kind of hopefully walk through a lot of the lessons that we want to sort of get through. Yes?
Is there a similar thing that we can open up on the server somewhere so
If you would like to use his model, if you go out to the L drive, if you get to the L drive, I know it's a challenge the way the network's working these days. In our BIM Bootcamp folder, at the highest level, maybe we can find it for you. It's actually called like Assignment 1, Draft 1 or something like that. Let me see if I can find it here. If we go out to the BIM Bootcamp, see if I can find it. I don't think I have it there. Let me see if I can find it. CE server, CE 110 files. See what's happening inside that BIM Bootcamp folder. It's right out there. It's Assignment 1 Draft. If you're having trouble getting that on your local machine and you need to get that, you want to look for that, you might just kind of like grab a thumb drive and kind of copy it over from the desktop machine or something like that. You see that much better connectivity using a wired connection as opposed to the wireless connections today.
Is there a workaround to get a 2013 product on a 2012 software?
That is not a good way to do that. Now, so if you're still working with a 2012 software, what happens there? Because you work on the workstation here. I'm trying to think. There's not a good way to backtrack in terms of doing that. It's really, it always moves forward. There's not a good way to kind of pull them back. Okay, so ultimately, like all these machines will get upgraded with 2013 next week too. Okay, but we're sort of in that in-between state right now. Okay, so sorry about that. I know this is saved in 2013 right now. Let's think about what we can do there. Okay, let's go back over here. Let's take a look at that file and see what's going on. In this file, you'll see that there's a first floor, a roof plan. There's a lot of different views you might want to create. One of the first things you want to think about as you're trying to lay these things out on sheets is really think about all the different views you might want to create relative to the different audiences. Because there's all these different people who want to use the information, and you start thinking about not having just a single view that's going to serve all the needs, but actually what information different people need to see to serve their specific need. And views are cheap. We can really duplicate as many different views and either crop or filter or add annotations to them to make them custom to what we want to see as we need. There's really no reason to say that you have to kind of keep everything as one big view. So although we currently have first floor roof plan in sight, those are referring to different levels. You can see one of the first things I'm going to do is start duplicating those views and creating additional ones. So different ones you may want to work with. For example, one view that we like to work with is this default 3D view. And that in particular, you can see the student's already gone ahead and cropped. It has a specific camera orientation and probably wants to put this view on a sheet. Now the problem with the default 3D view, that's probably the one you keep on going back to and rotating and changing and making a lot of kind of very ad hoc changes to. So the default 3D view is probably not the best one to go ahead and put on a sheet. You're likely to keep on changing that. What you can do, however, is just right-click on that and say duplicate the view. Okay. And when you duplicate the view, what you're doing is actually making a duplicate camera, one that you can keep separate from the default one. So if you keep on moving the default one around, that one will stay in place and won't keep on changing on you. So duplicating views is a really good thing to do, especially for this default 3D view. Now when you duplicate, you have a couple different choices there. There's duplicate, just only duplicate. That'll duplicate just the model elements. So everything that we're looking at this way, that's a real physical object, that'll be duplicated. There's another choice over here, duplicate with detailing. That's going to go ahead and duplicate not only the model, but it's also going to duplicate any annotations. So any dimensions, any text, any tags, and it'll also carry those. And I'll show you, there's kind of reasons for using both in different cases. There's really very little harm in duplicating with detailing other than the fact that you may get more annotations than you want in the other view. But for right now, I'm just going to duplicate the single view. I now have copy of 3D. I'm going to rename that. And within copy of 3D, I'll call this my front left aerial. I have a funny way of doing that. But somehow, you want to separate your presentation views or your views that you want to actually put on the drawings from the default 3D view. So here's the default 3D view back over here. It looks an awful lot the same now. Let me uncrop it though. And I'll orbit it around. I'll make some change to it. The big thing is though, what I wanted to do is basically always be able to go back to front left aerial and have that position in the same place. Isolate the two things so that I don't have to worry about them changing. Now, as you're going ahead and working with 3D views in particular, sort of a funny thing that happens with them. That, like we're going to show you on the floor plans, it's quite easy to add text, to add annotations, to add things to them. And for the most part, things stay in pretty good shape because, well, everything's kind of pretty much on a flat plane. It's easy to sort of control what goes on. Let me show you kind of a specific hole in how you sort of guard against it. And that is with 3D views. For example, here's my front left aerial. I can say I would like to go through and annotate it. So I'm going to put some text on the drawing to help explain what we're seeing here. So I'll go to my text tool. It's on the Annotate tab. There's the little text tool. And I can say, oh, there's different types of text. I can choose whether I want to center it, when I want to put just sort of a piece of text with no like leaders in front of it, whether we want to go ahead and left or right justify it. Mr. Ray, good day.
Hey, Wayne.
Hey, you sitting in and having fun?
I'd just like to put in a word there to express all of our thanks to Glenn for taking on a much bigger task than he thought he could deal with at very short notice and bending his schedule to accommodate us. He's a hero.
Well, thank you.
On May 11th, the group leader of the construction program will get to meet you on the last part of the presentation tomorrow. I really want to extend a very, very sincere thanks to Glenn.
My pleasure.
I've been working with Glenn since the early 1980s, and it's more fun every day.
Very good. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it. Well, thank you. You're too kind. You're too kind. Thank you. Thank you for stopping in.
Everybody.
Thank you. Ray's actually the reason I'm here in the first place, because he came to MIT and gave a little recruiting talk about how great the construction management program was. And it was the beginning of a 30-year adventure. So now he's yeah. Ray's a great person. You'll really learn. Yeah, love his classes. Okay, let me come back over here. I'll put some text in here. I'll just sort of draw some text out here. Oh, it's going to look pretty small, but I'll just put this as some text. That explains the drawing. And it's kind of hanging around there. Now let's talk about text and annotations and what you can do with all that stuff. Text, it turns out, is another type of object that has types. And everything in Revit has types, and text is one of those things. And you'll see the current type of this text by default, for me anyway, was text 330 seconds Arial. Okay, if you would like to go ahead and change that to a different setting, what you can do is pull down under the type selector and choose a different size. Make it 1/4 inch, make it 1/8 of an inch, whatever it is. Text just has different sizes. Let me explain just a little about sizes in text though, just so you don't get confused about this. You'll notice if I'm changing the text over here, it's changing on the size over here, okay, that makes sense. This reference over here, when it says 1/4 inch Arial, what that means is actually when this is printed out on a piece of paper, it'll show up 1/4 inch tall. It's actually the true scale of how it's going to plot out. Okay, so you can go ahead and choose whatever size you want to over here, and that'll be how big the text will appear, when it's actually readable on a piece of paper. Now, what gets confusing about text annotations for a lot of people is if you change the scale of the drawing, okay, the text does something that is a little unexpected to some folks. For example, if I make that drawing, as opposed to 1/4 scale, I'll make it 1/8 scale. Okay, look what happened. The text actually got a lot bigger. Okay, or it appears the text got bigger. Actually, the text didn't get bigger. The drawing got smaller. So the text is just going to be relative to it. Okay, that's still 1/4 inch text. That's still going to print out 1/4 inch. The drawing just got real small. Similarly, if I go through and change scale to be 1/2 inch, the text looks a lot smaller because relative to what we're seeing there it is. So just as you get going with this, a really good thing to do, even before you start putting all the annotations on, is if you can think about really on the sheets what the appropriate cropping and scale is going to be, and get them scaled to the way you want them, then when you put the annotations on, things will look good, they'll stay right. If you change the scale after you've already put the annotations, sometimes you get weird big blocks of text that are places you don't want, involves a lot of post cleanup. So much better to kind of plan out your layout and your sizes before you actually put a lot of the annotations in.
Can you show where matrix is out?
No worries. That is down here at the bottom. There is this little pull-up right here. There's all these little things down here which are really just all about this one drawing. Should it be shaded? Should it be hidden line? One of the choices is what the scale is. So you can choose a scale down there. Okay. And that is the printed scale. The funny thing, and what's sort of weird about working on the computer is, it's relatively scaleless when it's up here, because you just kind of keep on zooming in and zooming out. You don't really have much of a sense of scale until it actually gets plotted out. And so watch out for that a little bit. And then again, just in terms of standard scales, for buildings like this, which are relatively small, quarter scales are real common size. I do that for most residential construction. When you start getting commercial construction or bigger buildings, then 8 scale or 16 scale is much more common. And really it's good to have how much information you can fit on a sheet. Okay. You like it to sort of be as big as possible without being overly big. And those are some scales that people will understand pretty well. So here's the deal. I got some text. It's looking pretty good. Let's talk about text and just types, because you can go ahead and change the type. For example, here I got some text. It's 1/4" Arial. If I wanted to create some text that was, say 3/8 inch Comic Sans or whatever it is, you have some typeface that you want to use, the way you would do that, like we do most other things, is just to create a new type. So how that looks is I got this 1/4" Arial here. I will edit the type. Same thing I always do. I can either change this existing type or I can duplicate it. I'll give it a name. And then I can change the characteristics. So I'll make that Comic Sans. And I'll make the text 3/8 of an inch tall. Say OK there. So you can create as many different types as you want to. And let me go ahead and suggest this to you. What is probably better to do now, as opposed to going ahead and creating all this text that's say like 1/4" Arial, 1/2" Arial, things like that. How I actually lay out my drawings, I create different types based on the function of the text. I'll have room label as a type. I'll have floor plan note as a type. I'll have electrical note as a type. And the nice thing is, if I tag my text in those types, if I later on decide that I want to change the color, or change the font, or the size of a specific category, it will change all the instances, as opposed to having to go through and change them individually. So start thinking about your text not only in terms of literally the size, but what its function is. And give the types that way, because that will actually give you a lot more power later on to change it. So general rule about most of good modeling, always think about the function as opposed to the literal. Okay, because if you code it by the function, then you can change. Okay, so we can create some different text sizes, things like that. That's going to be fine. Now, in the 3D view, where the little rat hole I wanted to show you to warn you about what 3D views is, they have sort of a very funny attribute relative to the notion of tagging or putting some annotations on there. And that is, if you orbit or change the viewpoint in a 3D view, kind of weird stuff happens. Okay, and that's just because it's kind of hard to draw in 3D. You're never quite sure what that should be anchored to. So for your 3D views in particular, if you have something like this and you want to sort of keep the camera position there, and you want to make sure that I don't accidentally move it out of camera position when I was fumbling around in your file, or someone else working on the file with you, you don't want them to mess it up by accident. What you can do is, it's right down here. There's something which lets you actually go through and lock 3D view. It looks like a little house with a lock on it. And if you choose that, it'll kind of warn you. Do you want to save and orient this thing? Yes, we do. And now I can't orbit it around anymore. So just locking 3D views is a really good thing to do, either because you want to make sure that it's going to go onto a drawing, and you want to make sure that it doesn't get accidentally repositioned. I like to really keep those up. That 3D view is the one that's probably the most dangerous, because you want to keep going back to and changing. So it's probably the one that's most likely to kind of slide around underneath you. Okay. Now, as we're looking at these different drawings, like here's the 3D view and what's going on here, we can go ahead and put text in there. Text is one type of annotation we can work with. Another type of annotation we can work with that's even more powerful is something called a tag. Let's just talk about that to kind of introduce that. I'm going to show how you do that more in the floor plan view. All of these different objects in the model actually have a lot of database information behind them. For example, this door, these windows, there's all different like ID numbers and sizes, a lot of information about those that's in the model. So you're going to get used to the idea that rather than just putting text in, if you can do this, if you can tag things and then choose, for example, that window and pull on out, Okay, we can actually get some information about the window. So right now that was a window number 74. Let me kind of edit that. It's a part of a group, so I can like take a look at what's going on here. The 74 is actually something called the type mark. That's actually, oh, what I call that? In my window schedules, I tend to do windows as A, B, C. It's like it's a designation for the windows of the same type that is to show up in a schedule. Revit assigns these weird numbers by default. They're all unique. But I want that to be my window B. I have window A and window B, or window B and window C, something like that. I can change that marker here. And I'll say it's C. Say OK. And what happens now is that database tag, the tag will show that same information. So we're going to start learning to use tags when we can pull information out of the database. The reason that we like to use tags is, as opposed to putting the information there in the database the other way, if I go through and change that to be a window D or E1 or whatever it is, that tag's always going to keep updating itself. It's always going to show the live information from the database. So whenever we can actually have a tag which shows live information, as opposed to a static snapshot of information today, again, there's more power in the long run. And so be thinking about tagging. We'll go ahead and use that some more later. Let me go ahead and put another tag in here. I'll tag this window too. It's going to be pretty boring because that window actually has the same type. It's also a C window. But let me show you this nice feature about tags, which is something just to kind of tease ahead a little bit. And that is that tags are bidirectional. In the same way that dimensions are bidirectional, you can either use dimensions to report or you can use dimensions to drive. Okay. Tags do the same thing. Tags sort of report to me that that's Windows C. But if I want to change the designation there, oops, hang on, pop back out of here. If I want to change the designation here to not be C, but I'm going to make that the D1 window instead, it's going to warn me it's going to change many things, but it'll change all the ones. So I can change database values, I can report database values, and also change tags. So tags, watch out for tags. They're going to become very, very useful to us. Okay, tags show up under annotation. Actually, all the things, just about everything we're going to talk about today is either under view or annotation. Annotations is the big category. It's things that exist only in this drawing. Things like dimensions, text, and tagging, they're all kind of annotations. The important thing to know about annotations is they only sort of exist in a drawing. And for example, if I go back to that 3D view, you'll see the tag isn't there. It's only in that view right there. Now with tags, and well, here's going to be a good example in terms of what's going on. This drawing right now has a model as well as having 3 different annotations. It has some text and it has these 2 different tags over there. So if you were going to duplicate this now, I have the choice of either duplicating it. If I duplicate just the model elements, I'll just get that. Whereas if I duplicate the detailing too, it should really say duplicate not with detailing, it should say duplicate with annotations. That would probably be a more accurate reflection of what's going to happen here. Okay, you'll get that. So you can go ahead and kind of create the different views. The annotations really are independent. So for example, if in this version I want to put the label over here, that doesn't change it in this version. The annotations really are just on that one sheet and located on that sheet, so I can change them a little bit. That gives us the ability then to, what is it? Just go ahead and just represent custom information in each of the different views. So always think about things, whether it's a model thing, whether it's going to apply to all the views, or whether it's going to be view specific. Okay? Yes?
I think we do that C or B1 text.
Oh no, that is, it's kind of a very similar thing. These are grouped. I think it's sort of a similar thing. You can't change them very easily. Oh, so what I had to do here was sort of edit the array. I basically had to choose the group and say edit the group. And then I can go back and get the individual one. See if that'll work for you. If not, we'll come over and take a look at the specific case. There's some specific thing going on there. Yeah. Is that good? Excellent. Okay, let us go ahead. Let's shift over to some floor plan views and think about those. That's probably more classically how you think about this. So I'm going to go over to the first floor. And we have a very nice looking first floor plan here. This is okay. We have the furniture elements, we have the walls, we have the plumbing fixtures. Looking okay. It's very nice and basic, but we can basically go ahead and start annotating on top of this. What I would recommend, though, is as opposed to annotating right on top of this, let's go ahead and duplicate this view and start annotating a specific view, not just the first floor view. I tend to like to keep the first floor roof plan in sight fairly clean. They're just really the model elements as opposed to the annotations. So I'll start adding annotations to a sub view. So I'll go through and create and duplicate this thing. Let me duplicate something. Oh, I'll go ahead and duplicate. I'll just duplicate it. There's no detailing in it yet. I'm going to call this my framing plan. So let's think about how I'd apply the principle to these principles to the notion of making a framing plan out of this. Okay, so we are cropped pretty well right now. It's not hanging out too far, it's not too close, it's not right or whatever. The cropping, that's this part here, that's just going to make sure that when it lays out on the sheet, we get the part that's of interest. Looks like it's scaled okay, about a quarter scale. That looks pretty good. Okay. We can do other things just to really sort of affect it. We could colorize it if we want to. We can like shade it if you like. Try shading. Looks like there's not a whole lot of shading. It's a very white model. Okay, there's the whole notion of the level of coarseness. The level of coarseness settings will display. Anything that's basically displayed here in this view is actually how it'll plot out. The only thing that you have to sort of think about that doesn't quite display and plot exactly the same way is there's that whole notion of thin lines versus fat lines. Okay, the fat lines, the true line weight representations are what will be plotted out. Okay, thin lines is only sort of for us in terms of doing the modeling and looking at it. It will always plot to the fat line dimensions. There might actually be a setting to turn that off, but I think of it as always being that it will always plot with the true line weights. Okay, so we've cropped this pretty well. Let's think next about sort of filtering this a little bit. As we filter this in this specific view over here, okay, if this is a framing plan, we may not want to go ahead and include all this information in our framing plan. It's a great floor plan from the standpoint of like, well, let's make a second one called floor plan. We'll kind of think about what the difference is. Well, I'll do it later. Okay, got the framing plan. Let's think about what we may not want to have show up in the framing plan. For example, from the framer's standpoint, they may not want to see all the furniture. That is going to be critical to them at the point where they're doing the framing. We can also think about, things like the plumbing fixtures, how they should appear. We go to this whole idea of how we can filter things. And for example, or where it all is really tied up is in this visibility graphics. It's under the view tab. Visibility graphics is really a filtering system that lets you kind of decide what wants to be displayed, what shouldn't be displayed. Now if you pull on down here, let me pull down to, say, furniture. I can just turn that off. Apply that. You'll see that gets rid of those. What else we might want to change? In my framing plan, I may not necessarily want to have the plumbing fixtures so prominent. I like to know where the plumbing fixtures are, but because the framers would like to know where they need to sort of leave some allowances for the plumbing that needs to come through. What I often do with my plumbing fixtures in a framing plan is I'll go through and I'll half-tone them. Okay. That just kind of grays them out a little bit. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm going to go over, let me say, okay, I'm on the view and I go up to under the view tab, I choose visibility graphics. Okay, and under visibility graphics, if I check them on and off, that'll make them either appear or disappear. If I want a halftone, I'll choose the category, for example, plumbing fixtures, and halftone's one of the categories or one of the columns over here. You can turn that on or off. So similarly, maybe that casework. I can either hide the casework. If I want to keep it there, but just kind of halftone it. Again, what am I trying to do? It gets to, I'd like the framers to sort of know there's going to be a cabinet there, but not, they're not going to actually be framing it, but I want them to sort of be aware that there's going to be one there. So this is kind of filtering down the information about really what they need to see, what they don't want to see. Actually, another thing they might want to do, it seems to have some nice carpeting all over the floor. That might be a little bit distracting in terms of what the framers need to know. So if I want to take out that pattern, again, that's a visibility graphics thing. Like I say, visibility graphics. I'll go to the floors. I could just hide the floor because I don't think there's really much floor information in here. But I can also go through and say there's a pattern on the floor, and I can basically make the pattern invisible. Turn the pattern off. And that'll just sort of clear it out that way. So that's a much cleaner looking version of the plan right now. Okay, so mostly just working with visibility graphics, just kind of either filtering things out. You'll find that if I want to go through and create another plan, for example, let me do this. I'm going to go through and duplicate this view. I'm going to create something and call it the furniture plan. Okay, for this one, maybe I want to go the other way. Maybe I want to highlight things and really pull them out. For example, if I really want the people who are going to be ordering and thinking about the placing of the furniture to really see the furniture and not be able to miss anything that's on their hit list of things they have to pay attention to, I can say visibility graphics. I'll go to the furniture, and I can actually go through and change its line weight. So maybe for the furniture, I'll make it red, and I'll give it a really thick line weight that you cannot miss. Okay, so those are the things that I really want you to pay attention to in the furniture plan. So again, all I'm doing here is I go to visibility graphics, I choose the category that I want to change, and once I've chosen the category, I can either sort of give it a color, let me make them blue instead. Yeah, give it a line weight, whatever I want to do is the override. Can't highlight those things. So you start thinking about different views having different sorts of information, so either filtered or highlighted. Bring these up, bring it out. Okay. After you've gone through and sort of filtered or highlighted, let's go back to that framing plan. Okay. You say, okay, I'm ready to start putting dimensions on this building. I've got the cropping set this way. That's looking pretty good, but there might be something you notice about it. The building's actually looking pretty good. I got that big row of windows all across the front here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. If I go back to the 3D view though, you might notice that, well, I don't think we're seeing everything. Looks like there's actually some windows around the side too, and they're not showing up in the floor plan. Let's talk about why that could be. Okay. As we went through and cropped X, Y, okay, that's all, we're sort of setting the bounds there. As we think about the framing plan or the floor plan, both the same thing, they're cut with something at a camera where it's currently set to 4 feet off the floor. Okay, that's called the cutting plane, and it's determined by something called the view range. So the problem is when you have windows like this, which are a little bit high up, okay, just a little bit higher than that 5 feet or that 4 feet, they don't show. So if I go back to that framing plan, say, hey, my windows aren't showing. This could be a problem. If I want to put some dimensions in and show where the windows are, tag the windows, the framers aren't going to see these windows before looking at the floor plan. Okay. So we need to go ahead and kind of do a little bit of adaptation. So here's the sort of thing we can do. If the floor, when we cut through it 4 feet off the floor, is not showing the windows, we could go ahead and just raise the entire cutting plane for the entire drawing up to 5 feet or 6 feet or something that's really going to be up where you want it to be. And if you wanted to do that, you would go to the view, and we pull on down here and go to the view range. It's one of the choices here. You can see the cutting plane is actually one of the choices. So here's the 4 feet. Okay. But if you want to go ahead and change that to something higher, if you raise it up to 5 feet or 6 feet, go ahead and raise it up to something that will be within the range. So I'll say 6 feet, and I'll say OK, and you'll see the windows now start showing up. Now, that's an OK solution, but I'm going to tell you that's actually not the best solution for doing this. Because sometimes you get to this case where, well, you don't really want to be at 6 feet. 4 feet is actually pretty good height. 4 feet is higher than most kitchen cabinets and countertops and desks and things like that. But it tends to be below the upper cabinets or sort of interferences that might be coming down from the top side. So 4 feet tends to be a pretty good place. So since you have this kind of tension, I'd kind of like to be 4 feet, but I need to sort of show something else other places. There's actually a little bit of a hybrid you can put in here that will let you sort of have it both ways, where you can raise it in some places and keep it at 4 feet in other places. And that's something called a plan region. So we have the overall view range, What the plan region lets you do is really say, you know, just in this one little area over here, not everywhere, but in this one little area, I'd like to raise it up and have a different cutting plane there. Okay? And that's really useful. Oh, like this window, you know, this room's a classic example. If we cut too low, we don't see any of the clear story windows. If we cut up high through the clear story windows, you don't see the door. So you can't have it both ways unless you go ahead and kind of have two different cutting planes. So how that looks is we can say, edit that view range. Let me put that back to 4. Okay, they disappeared. What we need is actually this little thing called a plan region. And where you're going to find it is, it's in the view menu. And there's this little tool that lets us create different types of plans. It is right here. We have floor plan, reflected ceiling plan, structural plan. We also have plan region. And what does plan region do? Let me show you. It opens up this drawing mode where we can draw. It's kind of back to pink line mode, where what I do is I can highlight a specific area. Okay. Since we're doing areas, all the pink line rules apply. So can't intersect, can't overlap, has to join. Okay. We can say in that little area right there, what I would like to do is change the view range. So I'll make it 6 feet just there. And when I finish that, okay, you get a very funny little thing. It's a little window that pokes through and gives you a different view range just in that spot. Okay. Don't worry about that green box. That green box is okay. That's just there to let you know as we're designing that there's a different view range there. That's not going to print. No one else is going to see that. Just you are going to see that. So we can do the same thing. Let me go ahead. I'll put another view range over here. Plan region. Let me just draw them as a rectangle. That might be easier. So I know there was a window over here. Change that to be 6 feet. Actually, I'm sort of curious about this. Can I really? I wonder if I can do two independently of each other. This I don't know. This is, we're going rogue here. I don't know if regions have to be contiguous or not. Yep, looks like they can. You can basically make several different pieces of that region. Maybe a little strange, but they're all together. Okay, so I have 3 different little spots where I'm actually showing the window at a higher elevation. Okay, so that's just the other end of cropping. We have cropping XY, we also have cropping kind of in the Z direction. Think about really where the cutting is, because that's really useful. Okay, next up, let's talk about dimensions. Dimensions are a favorite topic. Let's think about how you use dimensions. Okay, pretty simple structure. Won't get too awfully bad. What I would tend to do is I'll always dimension things this way. I love to have a big overall dimension so that I know that this thing, if it's 30 feet long, I want to know it's 30 feet long. 10,000 feet away, it's 30 feet long by 18 feet wide, whatever it is, something like that. Within that, I'll often have a secondary dimension string that'll go from here to all the intersecting walls. So I'll sort of do the intersecting ones in here. I go here to here, and I do that. As a third string sometimes, I'll actually dimension to the windows. Okay, center lines of windows. But you often have strings of dimensions, different strings that kind of all relate them together. Let's think about how you can do that. It's all going to be under the Annotation tab. So the Annotation tab, again, is where we create these things. There's different types of dimensions here. A line is probably the most common dimension we keep on using. That'll follow the wall. So if the wall is skewing off at 45 degrees, it'll put a dimension at 45 degrees. As opposed to linear, which will always resolve it as XY. So if I grab that dimension, let me give you just a little nuance that's helpful for you. There's this notion right here, really, what are we going to bias towards? Yeah, everyone sort of does this differently. The only thing that's important is that you do it consistently. Okay, never have a single system. Some people love the dimension of wall center lines. I tend to love the dimension of the face of the core. Everyone has a different preference about what they want to do, and you can choose. So, if you choose this in advance, for example, I'll say that I want to be a face of the core kind of dimensioner. It'll always, as it's trying to pick things, it'll try to get the face of the core as opposed to try for the center line. Because when I go hovering over that wall, the question is, what is it trying to grab? And if I'm a wall face of the core guy, it's going to try and grab those two as opposed to hovering to the center line. So that'll just help you out a little bit. You can zoom on in incredible detail and really make sure that you got the face of the core. But if you want to do it at a little higher level, that choice will help make sure that the thing that you're interested in is the one that gets picked. So I'll say the face of the core over here. I'm going to go to the outside face over here. What happens is, as long as I'm clicking on valid pieces of geometry, I'm like actually choosing points that I'm going to create witness lines to, and then when I pull on out and I put it somewhere into the drawing area, okay, it'll actually place the dimension. So go ahead and give that a try. It's always, click on valid objects to valid reference points, it'll create witness lines, and then you pull out and click into the drawing area. That's when it'll actually go through and actually place the dimension. I'm going to go ahead and create another dimension line. Let me go ahead and create one. I'll do it again from the outside here, but I'll do it to this wall. And for the interior wall, it's always a little bit unclear whether you want to do the left side or the right side. Just do it consistently. Doesn't really matter. If you do a whole string of them, try to always get it to the left or always get it to the right. Your framers will like you if you do that. All here, I'll pull on up. I'll place that one. Actually, let me unplace that for just a second and kind of show you two different things that happen. One is, as I go through and I place them, as I pull on out, you might notice as you get close, there's going to be a certain spot where it like snaps into place. That's just some place where it thinks is a good regular spacing relative to the size of your text. So that's good to go ahead and accept that. Okay, something else I want you to know about the dimensions, though, is this. Remember, like the tags, dimensions are bi-directional. They'll actually push and pull. They'll record as well as kind of changing values. So if you come on out there and you frame this up as 29 foot, 10 foot, 29 foot, 10 inches, and 5/8, okay, you're probably going to get laughed off the site because no one actually dimensions things. Well, some people do, but never put out plans that have like 3 degrees of precision to them, something like that. Unless you're doing fine steel work and you can actually control that. Most framers are, if you get down to the 1/2 or 1/4 inch, you're doing really, really good. So what I might want to do with this building is, it says 29, 7, and 10 and 5/8. I'm going to go ahead and choose that outside wall and actually just change that to 30 feet. Because that's just probably a better dimension in the scheme of things. We tend to buy materials in either 2 foot or 4 foot or even increments. So if you can kind of make everything more even, better. In fact, the way this dimension will probably get determined is someone's going to go out there and pour a concrete slab, and when they pour that slab, they're going to measure out 30 feet. They don't want to measure 29 foot 10 and 5/8. Okay, then they'll build the walls on top of that. So,
How did you just change to about 30 feet?
let's show you that. It's kind of, here's the trick. With dimensions, what you have to watch out for, it's kind of weird. You don't choose the dimension and change it. What you actually do is you choose the object. And then when you choose the object, the dimension goes blue. Okay. If your dimension isn't turning blue, so you can change it. Okay. What you may need to do is watch out. Sometimes there's something that says activate dimensions. If there's something that has an awful lot of dimensions on it and it doesn't want to show them all, you have to click that activate dimensions to get them to actually show up and become blue. Okay, but you can go ahead and try and drive dimensions that way. Oh, for this last dimension over here, I would probably do it this way. I'd probably come here to here and then go to the center line of the window. But again, everyone has a different way of wanting to do this. So now, here again, I'm noticing my window's at some weird place. It's 4'2" and 11/16. Probably not the best place for it in terms of how someone's going to want to measure in the field. Let me go ahead and just say that is going to be 4'3". Kind of clean that up. Don't worry, this is actually sort of a very common thing. I am ended up doing this in my own practice. If we're drawing things, we're not always really precise, but when we start dimensioning, you realize you're off by 1/8 of an inch, and you sort of like resizing it. Yeah.
Choosing both the dimension and the object.
Okay, you don't choose the dimension at all, it's only just the object itself. So let's see if we can clean this up there. You just gotta, let's see what your dimension is. That one, they're clearing up the wall. Okay, and what are we trying to do? Well, you want to resize the length? Oh, what we have to do for that is actually you wouldn't choose that wall, you choose one of the end walls because it's going to stretch that way. So, you know, what it is, if you want to make that wall longer, it's going to sound weird. What you actually have to do is move that wall to make that wall longer. And now I'm into it. See, it's a weird relation. Yeah. Oh, okay. The little concept. Oh, wait. Yes, that's what it is. It's backwards. Okay. As you're going through and putting dimensions in, go ahead and kind of put them in both directions. So I got some dimensions going this way. I got some dimensions going the other way. Let me go here to here on the outside. And I'll go from here. Kind of put those inner ones. The nice thing is, because I have that thing set up where it's biasing towards the faces of the core, you notice I'm actually going pretty quickly. I'm not really getting down there in great detail because it's going to do a pretty good job of always kind of finding the face of the core for me. So I can kind of keep that thing, you know, I'll work that pretty consistently. Okay. We would probably also do a dimension across the front here, just relative to all these windows. So maybe I'll do this. I'm just going to click on the center lines of the windows. Okay, let me put that one in there. Let me give you just a couple other little nuances about dimensions you might want to know about. One is this. You will notice that when I went and put that dimension string, I sort of forgot to go through and put in the last piece of it. Okay. Every once in a while we have a dimension string and you want to add, oh, I forgot that one line. Let me put in one more witness line. Okay. If you're in that situation, what you want to do is as follows. You come on down here, you choose the witness line, and you right-click and say, let's edit the witness lines. When you say edit the witness line, it should really say that you're going to add a witness line so you can add it back in there. Oops, I take that. Let's do it back. I have to click in space properly, so I'm going to right-click, edit witness lines, go there, and then just pull off into the drawing area. Okay, so you can always add witness lines that way. So if you want to add a witness line, just choose the dimension line and say edit witness lines and add a new one. The other thing you may want to do is actually move or remove a dimension line. And how you do that is you choose the dimension, and on the witness line itself, there's a little blue dot that shows up. If you right-click that, you can either delete it or move it. So if I wanted to move it, I can just choose a new reference point. Or if I want to delete it completely, I can just delete the line and it'll take it out. So just really, different nuances to how you go through and edit those things. But the important thing is always, don't choose the line unless, you move. When you choose a line, you're moving the witness lines. If you actually want to change the dimension, choose the object that you want to move. Okay, then use the dimension line to drive that. Does that sort of make sense? That's weird, but it sort of makes sense. Okay, so I got a nice dimension drawing here. That's looking pretty good. The nice thing is now, if I have a nice dimension drawing here, if I want to go through and create another view, for example, I'm going to duplicate this view, and I'll choose Duplicate with Detailing. Okay. I now have one. The dimensions got copied over to it. So you can sort of decide. What I'll often do is actually dimension and kind of use that one as the basis for doing a lot of copying from here on out. Let me call this, I'm just going to call this the floor plan. So once you start having these different plans, and some have annotations, some don't have annotations, then we can start going, let's just keep on adding things to it. How about, I'll go to that furniture plan for a second. In the furniture plan, I'm going to illustrate the concept that a lot of times you can add text to the plan to explain things. For example, I know, because I designed it, that that's a bookcase, and those are some filing cabinets. That may not be so clear to someone else looking at this drawing if that's what those are. So you can start adding just little text annotations to help people understand what's going on in your drawings. To do that, we can choose some text. I can choose whether it's plain text or whether I'm going to have a little leader to it. And I'm going to say that that is a bookcase. And I'm going to do another little piece of text with a leader. That's fine. I'm going to say that over there is a file cabinet, whatever it is. Don't be afraid of using text. Text is a good thing. A lot of times you have to get the drawing turned in 10 minutes. You don't really have time to do a very accurate 3D model. Just put a piece of text there explaining what your intent is, and then you can talk about it. At least get something in there. Yeah, text is okay. People do a very good job. Sometimes actually text is better because people will tend to imagine the best thing that they wanted it to be when they see that piece of text, as opposed to your kind of half-formed, misshapen 3D model of something or other that wasn't everything they were hoping it would be. So text is not. Just for quickie things. Yeah, we need to clean out that ambiguity eventually. But text is okay. When people see text, they tend to imagine what they want to see. So use text to your advantage when you can. To start with. Yeah. I'm thinking that fine walnut burl bookcase. You're thinking IKEA. You know, it's like, but it's a bookcase. Okay. So text is good. Go ahead and use text. Let's talk about tags though, because tags is really a much more powerful concept. Tags again being this way of really pulling information out of the database and showing them. So here's what I really want to think about relative to tags, and I'll go to my framing plan to show it. That's where I'd probably put them. I could put a piece of text over here that says that this is window B, or I can put in some piece of text that says that it is, 32 by 18 or whatever it is, and that's okay. The problem is that piece of text is static. It's never going to change based on anything I'm doing in the database. Okay. A much better way to do this is to actually have a tag that will pull information directly out of the database. Okay? And to do that, here's what we did. Right next to text, you'll find tagging, and there's tagging by category. Tagging does this. Let's go ahead and grab a tag. I'm going to tag that window, or that door. I'll put the little leader right here. Oh, it's interesting, I got a two-step leader. We'll do the next one without a leader. I'm going to tag that door. I'm going to tag that door. What it's doing is it's displaying a little bit of information out of the database. That's door 1, that's door 2, that's door 3. And if you click on the door, you can actually see all these doors have a little ID number. It is the mark. There's an ID of individual things. That's called just the mark. There's something called a type mark, which is again a whole bunch of things that all have the same type. It's an identifier that gets the whole category as opposed to the individual instance. So I got these little door identifiers right now. And the nice thing is they're two-way. If I decide that doesn't want to be door 2, that wants to be door 5, I can make it door 5, and you'll see that the door over here, oops, keep on double-clicking to opening things. I shouldn't do that. You'll see that if I choose the door, it'll have the mark over there too. So tags are a way of pulling information out of the database as well as kind of feeding information back in and changing information in the database. Okay, a similar little thing we can do with tagging looks like this. We can go ahead and tag all the windows. That's another thing I tend to like to tag. I tend to tag doors and windows. Those are my two favorite things to tag. I'll put some tags in. I can tag them individually. I'll put a little leader in there. Think about that. I'll tag that one. I'm trying to figure out why it's giving me a two-step leader. I don't like two-step leaders. Try this one. Annotate. Cancel out of there. Annotate. I'll tag this thing. That's better. That's the way I like it. I like to just put them in there. So you'll see these are all, keep on double clicking. I'm going to stop doing that in a second. These are all window D1 right now. What's the advantage of this window D1? The nice thing is, if I change the category on these windows, this is actually a type parameter. It's it's all the different windows of the same type are sharing it. If I decide that those are going to be window B or whatever they're going to be, I can type that in there. It'll change all of them. So there's this thing about tags are better than going ahead and putting in text because you can pull information just right out of the database. And you can really pull out almost any information that you want to. For example, over here right now, my little tag for the doors is showing it's this thing called the ID or the mark. Okay? If I wanted to show some other information in there, what I can do is actually edit that mark. And what I can do is choose that tag and say edit its family. And you'll see this is how it's actually defined. There's a big label in there. And I can edit that label. Currently it's showing me the database value of the mark. But if I want to show something else there instead, for example, if I wanted to show the width of the door, I could put that over there. Maybe I'll put the width and separate it with a little carriage return so that it like separates it down. Pull that out. So when I load that back into the project and overwrite, now all the tags actually show a little bit of information about the door. And the nice thing about that is if I go through and change that information, for example, if that now becomes a 36-inch door, okay, the tag is going to change and show the right information in there. So tagging is a little bit better because tagging always sort of shows you information from the database, kind of really in the best form. It's really showing you live information. But yeah, you can get
this where you got an edit section.
Oh, no worries. How I did that was if there's a tag and you would like to edit what it shows, I can choose the tag and I can say edit the family. In other ways, I think I can just double click on it. That's what I keep on doing by accident. Okay, I'm opening it up so I can edit it. See if you can get that part.
Got it.
And once you got that, choose the label. You can say edit the label. And then you can choose which of the different database values you want to show. So depending on what it is you want to see, you can create your own tags and just really display any of the information in the database back over there in the drawing. Now tagging is such an incredibly cool concept that there's some tools to make it really, really easy to do. You can go ahead and tag things by category. That'll tag them one at a time. There's this other thing right next door to it called tag all. Tag all is really cool because it'll basically say tag everything that isn't already tagged in these categories. So for example, I'm looking at this drawing. I need to get all the windows tagged and I need it done quick. I'll say tag all. I can choose either windows or windows or doors, whatever it is I want to tag. Actually, I don't want to tag all those things. Just windows. I don't think I have any other doors. Say OK. Okay, and all the windows got tagged. Okay, so really quick in terms of doing that. Tagging is sort of a very powerful thing. Now, tagging works not only for floor plan views and things like that, it also works for elevations. So for example, if I go over to the elevation and you see there's all those windows on the side of the building, if I want to tag them, I can again tag them. I'll tag that window and that window. We can grab the tag, I'll pull it out just so it's easier to see. The nice thing about the tag though, those are all the B windows because that's what I decided to call them today. If something changes and that becomes the F window, it's changed over here in the database, it's changed throughout here, it's also changed back over here. So you have this, it's kind of really cool. You have notes that actually drive behavior that show up consistently across the entire document. Okay, so that's pretty good. So think about how to use tags. Tags are really good for doors and windows. The other place where tags tend to become very, very useful is if you have a door or window schedule. Let's take a look at that because that's how you typically try to correlate all this information together. I could go ahead and put down here that all of these different windows are 30 inches wide by 18 tall and have a manufacturer, but rather than putting that in just as a series of text notes, there's this whole notion of really, let's go ahead and create a schedule. And in this one, we've already created a door and window schedule. I think there's already a door and window schedule set up in your template. But if you go to like the window schedule, you'll see that type window F is 3x4, a double hung, and that's information that we can use to then place it on the plan. So anytime anyone sees F, they know that I can look in the schedule and see what the actual specification is. I know that that's going to be a mill guard window. If I know that it's going to somehow involve safety glass, whatever it is, I can put all that information in here. What I'm doing is basically, oh, it's interesting. It doesn't want to do that because it's a group. Well, I'll live with that for now. I'm not trying to fix that right now. I can change these to be C and D if I want to. But you have complete interconnection between the database objects and the properties and how they show there, the tagging and the tables. They all sort of fit together. And the way that actually comes back and helps you later on is when you go through and do your sheets. For example, let me come on over here and go to one of the sheet views. Oh, I'll take off one of these views that he already has on the sheets, just so I can put another one in here. I'm going to go ahead and put my framing plan in there. Let me let that line up so it's right across from the other one. Okay, so I got my tags there. I got my window and door tags there. A really nice thing to do is this. Let me go ahead and take, I don't think it already has the schedule down here. I'll remove it over there. Actually, what I can't even do is just drag it up. That'll work too. I'll drag it between sheets. So now I actually have a very nice thing. I have a plan view that actually shows the different windows and the tags on them. I have a schedule right next to the plan view that shows the information so I can make sense of all those things. Oh, window F is a 3x4 double hung logo. Okay, so you want to start thinking about these sheets in terms of really how you're presenting the information. For the person who's getting a sheet, really what information do they need? The truth is, if you start breaking information across 5 different sheets, chances are when someone grabs that sheet and goes out to the job site, they're not going to get all 5 of them, or they're not going to look any further than what they can see on the first sheet. A lot of times people are really good about going back through your entire book of details to find that detail. You have to be really clear about making the information really obvious where there's additional information available. So as you think about your sheets and laying them out, think about really what it is that people need to see. Maybe you have one sheet which is all about sort of views that you present to the client about the architectural representation. You have another sheet which is all about the framing details and the schedules and whatever it's going to take to build this thing. There's a lot of ways you can organize things, but just have some scheme in mind about how you're doing it. It really is, there's kind of an art to laying out sheets to really get the right information to the right people. Okay. Let me go ahead, we'll cover rooms next time. I'm going to run out of time this time. But let me go ahead and just finish up today with the whole notion of sheets and actually how you get them out. This one actually has some sheets already laid out. But at the tail end of this process, we're going to go ahead and create something called a DWF file. That lets us go ahead and share the model. Let me show you what we mean by that. Okay, I got all these different sheets, and I could go through and just plot these all out as a PDF and send them to someone. That'd be fine. That PDF they can take, put out on their printer, or send it to the print shop, whatever it needs. They can only print them all. They can actually get to the detailed model information generally. They can only print them, and that'd be okay. All we cared about was printing. If we want to actually transfer model information, though, there's a better format. It's called DWF. I wish I knew what that stands for. Actually, I don't. But under Export, you'll see that you can create a DWF file, and let's kind of talk about how it works. When you say you want to create a DWF file, by default, this is actually sort of already set up because I was working on it a little bit earlier. It says, oh, you must want to print out the current view, this one sheet. And if you say yes now, you will plot out this one sheet very much like a PDF file. We'll do this one sheet, and we'll be handing it off to someone to clean that one thing. If you, on the other hand, would like to go ahead and have multiple sheets and actually include the model data, we're going to do a small change. What we're going to do is say, hey, not just this current view, let's go to all the views that are available. I'm going to say all the views and sheets in the model. And then we can choose which sheets we want. I want that sheet, and this sheet. And in addition to the sheets, I'm also going to choose of all the different views you want to include. You don't need to include them all, but the one that's going to be the most useful is this one right here, the 3D default view. Okay? If you include the 3D default view, okay, and it has everything turned on in the visibility graphics there, and say next, Let's go ahead and put this out here. Oh, I'm going to put it in my documents. Okay, it's going to create something not too awfully exciting over here. It created something that's very much like a PDF file. But let me show you what it can do that's actually a little bit better than that. If I go back in here to my, let's see if I have it still open. I do not. I'm going to open up a program called Autodesk Design Review, and that's the reader for reading those things. So Autodesk Design Review is to DWFs what Acrobat Reader is to PDF files. Okay, so I'll show you what it looks like. Design Review is right here. When we go ahead and we say we want to open something, we not only get the sheet views, these are the sheet views that we could go ahead and plot out. We also get this 3D view. And the nice thing about the 3D view is it's a navigable 3D view. It's spinning around in a funny way. That's going to make me dizzy in just a second. But the nice thing about this view is we can go ahead and, let me find it in here. There's my little orbiting thing. That's just orbiting. I can go through and do things like walk into the view. Let me go on down a little bit. I'm panning, come on, pan. Oh, actually not panning, I want to go up and down. I'm thinking incorrectly, there we go. Now I'm looking inside. I can look around, kind of check out your model, see what's going on. So think of this as just sort of being an interactive 3D view. And this is sort of a really cool way to share models, because people can share your model without actually needing the Revit software. All these different model objects actually contain the true information. So I know what kind of chair it is, I know what the data is behind that flat screen TV, I know what the data is behind this. So you can find that the DWF model is actually where we do change for things like we can change them with Navisworks, we can change them with quantity takeoff. It's a way of passing model information as opposed to just using lines. Okay, so go ahead and for what you're going to do, save out a DWF file that includes your sheets as well as the DWF, or that 3D view, okay, and don't forget to submit that. Okay, let's go ahead and adjourn for now in terms of what's going on. I got to go run and give a webinar in just a few minutes, so I got to get set up for that. But if this raise some questions, if you can hold them for the beginning of the next session, that would be fantastic. Just because I need to go get a computer set up in terms of doing some stuff. But you're pretty good about what to do. So your goal is really to go ahead, take that model, go through and create some sheets that have some views that illustrate, some annotations, some dimensions, kind of make them, some good views. You don't need a lot of views, a floor plan view, some elevations for conventions, some tagging, some things like that. All those things would be great to have on the sheets, but at the end of it all, what we want to do is create that DWF and be able to submit that. And when I told the other class, let's do it, you'll have through tomorrow morning to get that done. So just, take some time now or this afternoon, or don't work too late. I don't want anyone, late at night finishing this up, because, you don't need excessive perfection here. The point of this first assignment is really just giving you the experience, start to finish through the whole process. This won't be the last design you do. It's not your architectural masterpiece. It's really just sort of ability to illustrate that you can use the tools. So use the tools and tail end, if your countertop's floating an inch off of your cabinets, I'm not going to care. Stuff like that. Just go ahead. The big thing is that you got all those different types of things in there. So more accurate the better, but don't kill yourself over it. That make sense? Beauty. Okay, let's go ahead and adjourn for now, and we will see you guys at 2:30.